For over a decade, General Motors threatened to fire any engineer caught building high-performance engines. A corporate ban kept Chevrolet's most dangerous hardware locked behind closed doors. Then, in 1970, one vote changed everything. The LS6 454 hit the street, independent dynos pulled 462 horsepower, and it embarrassed everything else on the road. Only 4,475 were ever made. That story begins with a memo nobody was supposed to see. In June 1957, the Automobile Manufacturers Association issued a resolution that would change the course of American performance cars. Under pressure from lawmakers and public safety advocates, the AMA called on all member companies to stop promoting speed and racing. General Motors, led by President Harlow Curtis, signed on, pledging to pull back from factory-backed motorsport and to keep high-output engines out of the spotlight. The policy was more than a public gesture. It became an internal rulebook, reinforced by a series of confidential memos and strict engineering guidelines. By 1958, GM's board had voted to embed the AMA's anti-racing stance into its own operations, capping new production engines at 400 cubic inches, unless a rare exemption was granted by the Engineering Review Board. The restrictions only tightened as the 1960s progressed. In January 1963, GM Chairman Frederick Donner sent a memo to every division, warning that any engineer caught developing an engine larger than 400 cubic inches or more than 350 horsepower would face immediate disciplinary action. The Donner memo was blunt. Racing was forbidden, and so was any trace of a mystery motor. The fallout was swift. Pontiac's Super Duty projects were canceled, Chevrolet's experimental 427 was shelved, and engineers found themselves reassigned or threatened with termination. Internal review boards met monthly, auditing every new engine proposal and flagging anything that crossed the line. Publicly, GM maintained a cautious front, with executives repeating the company's commitment to restricting speed in consumer automobiles. In interviews and press releases, behind closed doors, the message was even clearer. Performance was a liability. The 400 cubic inch limit and the threat of job loss created a climate where even the most ambitious engineers had to work in the shadows. For more than a decade, the most powerful engines in Detroit were kept on ice, not by lack of talent, but by policy, paperwork, and the weight of a single signature. Inside Chevrolet's engineering offices, the crackdown was relentless. The Engineering Review Board, known as ERB, operated like a shadow government, reviewing every engine proposal and demanding total compliance. Each month, engineers gathered in closed-door meetings, uncertain if their latest project would survive the audit. The threat was real. One unsigned memo or an unauthorized test could cost a career. Pontiac's Mac McKellar later described the order as absolute. Anyone caught working on a forbidden engine would be fired on the spot. Yet, the hunger for performance did not vanish. Instead, it went underground. A small circle of engineers, men like Ed Cole, Zora Arkus Duntov, and Tom Keating, learned to keep their ambitions off the books. They used code names, swapped notes in person, and stored prototype parts in unmarked crates. Oral histories recall how dyno runs for the so-called mystery motor happened late at night, logged only in private notebooks, never in official files. At the Milford Proving Grounds, experimental big blocks were tested under the guise of emissions research or durability studies, always one step ahead of the ERB's paper trail. The risk was constant. Every phone call, every bench test carried the possibility of exposure. One misplaced camshaft or one overheard conversation could trigger an audit, but the clandestine team pressed on, tweaking compression ratios and cam profiles in pursuit of power that no one was supposed to notice. Their work stayed hidden, protected by secrecy, and the hope that someday the rules might change. In the darkness of corporate restriction, the foundation for the LS6 was being laid, engine by engine, memo by memo, always just out of sight. On December 12, 1970, the General Motors Executive Committee assembled in Detroit, facing a decision that would upend more than a decade of self-imposed restraint. For years, the boardroom had been a fortress against any return to big cube performance. But that day, with a single vote recorded in the official minutes, the 400 cubic inch ceiling was struck down. The ban that had defined General Motors' public image and dictated the boundaries of every engineer's ambition was officially over. The record shows the moment as routine corporate business, but for the engineers who had spent years working in secrecy, it was a sudden green light. The door to factory-built power had swung open. Chevrolet's leadership wasted no time. Within days, design teams were called into closed-door meetings. Production planners dusted off long-shelved blueprints. The LS6, once a whispered possibility, was now cleared for the assembly line. The reversal was as abrupt as the original ban. Years of hidden work were now unleashed by executive order. For the first time since the late 1950s, the muscle car wars would have a new contender, and General Motors engineers were finally free to show what they had been building in the shadows. Chevrolet's engineering team wasted no time turning their hard-won freedom into a statement of intent. The LS6 wasn't just a bigger engine, it was a calculated leap past the LS5, built with a clear purpose. On paper, both shared the same 454 cubic inch displacement, but the similarities ended there. The LS6 ran a solid lifter camshaft, a feature reserved for racers and serious street contenders. Its aluminum intake manifold, lighter and more efficient than the LS5's cast iron, pushed more air and fuel into the cylinder. The compression ratio told the rest of the story, 11.25 to 1 for the LS6 compared to the LS5's 10.5 to 1. That single number meant higher cylinder pressure, more explosive combustion, and a torque curve that peaked at 500 pound-feet. Factory build sheets confirmed the LS6's internal upgrades, tighter tolerances, bigger ports, and a cam profile that let the engine breathe at high revolutions per minute. Chevrolet's own documentation listed the LS6 at 450 horsepower, but every detail suggested the number was a conservative estimate. The LS5, with its hydraulic lifters and milder cam, was a strong performer in its own right, but it couldn't match the LS6's intensity. For the first time, Chevrolet's engineers were free to build an engine with no corporate leash, and the LS6 was their answer. Doubt always followed the LS6's factory numbers. Magazine testers wanted proof, and they got it. In 1970, Motor Trend rolled an LS6 Chevelle onto the dyno and recorded 462 horsepower, 12 more than the badge claimed. The Marty report, another independent test, found 447 horsepower at the wheels, confirming the engine's brute force was not just marketing. For comparison, Chrysler's 426 Hemi, the standard bearer for American muscle, posted 425 horsepower by its own factory rating, and rarely topped that in magazine tests. The LS6 did not just meet expectations, it quietly surpassed them in the hands of third-party testers. These results were not outliers, they were repeated by journalists and collectors alike for decades. With independent dyno sheets in hand, the story turned from speculation to certainty. The only question left was why so few were ever built. Official factory records put the total number of 1970 Chevelle SS454 LS6s built at just 4,475 units. That figure includes both coupes and El Camino models, and it stands as a stark measure of how rare this car truly is. In an era when Chevrolet could move hundreds of thousands of Chevelles in a single year, only a tiny fraction left the line with the LS6 under the hood. Production planners, working under the shadow of the recently lifted ban, allocated resources carefully. Every LS6 engine required special assembly, tighter tolerances, and a sign-off from engineering managers who knew just how close the program had come to being shelved. The build sheets confirm it, 4,475 cars, each a product of a brief moment when GM's performance lid was finally, if temporarily, removed. That scarcity was no accident. It was the direct result of years of policy squeeze, and it would only be amplified as new regulations closed in. Almost as soon as the Chevelle SS454 LS6 reached showrooms, a new kind of obstacle appeared: one that no engineering breakthrough could outrun. In 1970, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners published a premium schedule that singled out high-horsepower cars for steep surcharges. Dealers watched as insurance agents began quoting rates that doubled or even tripled for any vehicle with a factory rating above 400 horsepower. The LS6, with its 450 horsepower badge, landed squarely in the crosshairs. For many buyers, the cost of coverage eclipsed the monthly car payment. Sales staff fielded calls from frustrated customers, some forced to walk away from orders they could no longer afford. The market for big block performance shrank almost overnight, not because the cars were not wanted, but because the price of owning one had soared out of reach. Scarcity became locked in, not by lack of demand, but by a system that punished raw power at every turn. Today, the LS6's 450 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque stand unchallenged among factory muscle cars, a record set as the era collapsed. Its brief dominance exposes a truth. Innovation often waits behind locked doors, only to be unleashed when it is almost too late. What else still waits in the shadows?